Ahmad Shuja Jamal joins me in our Washington studio. Shuja is an Afghan commentator and analyst, and someone who knows the country and its politics, its culture inside and out. Shuja, the fact that this vote has been delayed in Kandahar by a week, does it really make a difference? I mean, if Taliban militants want to wage an attack, they might just still find a way to do it.
Absolutely. The Taliban, so the fact that the vote has been delayed in Kandahar for a week actually shows how much it affects the security in that province, because one attack has effectively taken out and has decommissioned the entire senior security leadership of that province. And that province is one of the pivotal provinces in that part of the country, because the leadership in that country, in that province, actually affects and has influence over the surrounding provinces of Zabul and Helmand, which are also key as transit points, but also as border areas in Afghanistan. So the Taliban have done this, but there's also been attacks on polling stations, on campaigns, on candidates themselves. And so if there's, to the extent that there is any effect of the increased insecurity and the targeting of these campaigns on election turnout, I think this will affect it less, but those other attacks on the polling stations and voter registration stations are much more likely to have that effect.
So the Taliban has asked Afghans to boycott the elections. And with this attack, a lot of people might be afraid to go to the polls and vote. And if they don't, it's a victory for the Taliban. So do you think Afghans will be afraid to go out and vote on Saturday? Obviously not in Kandahar, but in other parts of the country.
I think it would be an understatement to say that the Afghans are not afraid, but because the security situation in the country for many years has been such that there's an increased feeling of insecurity in the cities, in the rural areas, in the districts. But I think Afghanistan overall is going through a very difficult situation as we speak, economically, politically, but also in terms of security. And so the long delayed by over 3 years now, the parliamentary elections are taking place at a very, very difficult time in the country's history. And the fact that it is taking place tomorrow, I think, shows that there's a commitment among the Afghan politicians, the political class, but also to a certain degree among the people for these elections to go through. There's been a sort of deluge of candidates, people who've stood in the elections. But what's really important is that in parliamentary elections, candidates actually come from local areas. These people represent the tribes and the ethnic patchwork that exists in every district and in every province in Afghanistan. And so they're going to mobilize their voters at that level. And even though the Taliban have threatened voters, and they've actually also attacked campaigns and attacked candidates, there will be a chilling effect. Certainly, the Afghans love their lives. They love to stay alive. But also that at the local level, at the tribal and clan level, there is a mobilization that is ongoing.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, all these years after the war in Afghanistan began after 2001, does it surprise you in a war that was supposed to defeat the Taliban are very much still in existence? In fact, some might argue they have made a comeback of sorts. Is that surprising?
I think that's a question that a lot of Afghans ask themselves, is that with approximately 40 countries in the world, from Europe to the US, we're in Afghanistan for so many years, and the Taliban are still back in the game again. I think the fact that they're stronger than they have been before, and the fact that the war is now more kinetic and hotter than it has ever been before, speaks not only to the manner about the way that the war has been managed, but also about the support that the Taliban have received. If you look at individual Taliban commanders, if you actually speak to a lot of their individual fighters, these people they come from the rural areas, they tend to be less educated, but the fact that they've been able to wage spectacular attacks, I think, speaks to a certain level of sophistication in the way they've been trained and this intelligence that they receive, and that can only come from outside of their own particular group, and I think they've received that support.
Interesting. We'll leave it there. Ahmad Shuja Jamal, tashakkur. Thank you for being in our program.